Olá, olá a todos, bem-vindos ao Revelando Shakespeare especial de sexta-feira, Shakespeare and Wine, a segunda edição do nosso Revelando Shakespeare especial, com Michael Dobson, diretamente de Stratford-Upon-Avon, e com a nossa querida Liana Leão. E logo mais, Tuna e Fernanda vão passar aqui também para conversar conosco. Eu, Valéria Marque, e meu parceiro Daniel Abrantes, estamos aqui.
Boa noite, bem-vindos todos. Muito obrigado mais uma vez, Michael e Liana. Obrigado.
Olha aqui, Janaína está aqui conosco. Boa noite, Janaína.
Tchau, Janaína.
Vamos tomar um vinho. Let's drink wine together. Então, essa, só para explicar para quem não sabe, essa é uma live que a gente faz de vez em quando. E essa, a proposta é a gente fazer essa live com o Michael, vamos falar em inglês, e falar um pouco sobre o vinho em Shakespeare. Hoje vamos falar sobre ressacas, personagens que fizeram bebedeiras, e falar da vida e beber vinho, e ter um tempo gostoso entre nós e vocês. Então, eu queria dar boas-vindas. Olha só, além da Janaína, a Flávia Miranda também está aqui.
Boa noite.
E a Cláudia Roberta também está mandando um beijo aqui para a gente. E tem várias pessoas chegando e dando um oizinho. Então, nós vamos começar. Eu vou pedir, quando a gente não estiver falando, a gente fecha o microfone, tá? Por causa do eco. Mas hoje, agora eu queria pedir aos nossos queridos convidados que deem aí o seu olá. O Daniel também deu o seu oizinho. Ó, mais gente chegando aqui. Marília Vieira, good evening. Felipe Ávila, good evening. Roberto Borenstein, good evening. Good evening. Ok. So, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Valeria. It's a huge pleasure to be here in this formless, free, experimental, possibly not entirely sober conversation.
Perfect. That's the complete definition. Thanks a lot for being here, Michael. Again,
it's a treat.
You are so kind to us, and you always have a lot to share with us. And guys, Michael, who is watching, a few already know, but Michael is in Stratford-Upon-Avon, so he's 4 hours ahead of us, I guess. So
it's getting on towards midnight. In fact, no, I would have broadcast from my beautiful office, but the building is locked by this time of night.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for this amazing effort. And Liana, thanks a lot for being here too, and sharing all your Shakespearean knowledge too.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
You were much missed in Stratford at the weekend because you were such a highlight of the birthday procession. The year you were in the birthday procession, and there was of course no actual birthday procession this year, and this meant that we needed you even more.
I saw the commemorations. I think I saw Stanley Wells putting a crown, flowers in the church, and I saw some of it.
Yeah.
But you were there.
Yeah.
Were you there?
The town council. No, that was filmed in advance by the town council to put on their little video. So I was doing other things on the birthday itself, hosting the online birthday lecture, which was actually delivered by Lena Orlin from DC, from near the Folger Shakespeare Library from the States. And I presented the Lifetime Achievement Award, which normally I would do with a lot of wine during all the speeches at the big official lunch. But I did that via Zoom. So the lucky recipient is still waiting for his check and his big silver prize. But that's John Carney, the great South African actor and anti-apartheid activist, whom the police used to describe as a terrorist who claims to be an actor, which is a great thing to have on your CV, I think. But no, he was wonderful. You can watch the video of me presenting the prize on the Shakespeare Institute web pages, and John makes a great acceptance speech. I filmed a 1-hour interview with him, which will be up on the Institute web pages soon, in which he talks about his lifelong engagement with Shakespeare and the ways in which it intersected with his work as an anti-apartheid activist in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and how he was interrogated by the police about whether he actually had to kiss Desdemona on stage when playing Othello, because of course it was illegal at the time, which meant it mattered. Here's Tuna. Look, there's Tuna in dramatically lit as always. That's fabulous to see you, Tuna.
Thank you, my dear. I'm safe today. I found kind of set.
Wow. There's a great sound effect has come with you, as though you're in an electric chair.
Can you talk with the phone, Tuna, maybe, or not?
I don't like electric.
We will wait, Tuna. Tuna is a little bit but it's a great day because Tuna received the vaccine, so it's good.
Well, we hope you're immune, and we hope Liana is full of antibodies too, and fully recovered and immune to practically anything.
I took advantage of my immunity and went to the beach to see my nieces, and then there I thought, nothing was happening because nobody was wearing a mask, completely normal. And I said, what is happening here? Nobody's talking about COVID. So it was, nice. But Michael, let me go back to the lecture, the birthday lecture.
Yeah.
Do you think we can watch it on online?
Yes. The recording is still up. It's on the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust website. So if you look up birthday lecture, Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, then you will find it. And it's Lena Orlin. It's a beautifully researched piece about the funerary bust of Shakespeare and why he is wearing that little gown in particular.
And why?
Oh, it's an Oxford commoner's gown. I mean, I don't want to spoil the punchline of the lecture or brutally simplify its argument or leave out its exquisite deployment of archival sources. But Lena suggests that funerary busts depicting somebody with a cushion and a pen and a little gown like that exist from that period in a radius around Oxford, because that's where there was an industry in making funerary busts of intellectuals, and that therefore it looks as though Shakespeare, who commuted through Oxford, had possibly commissioned his own funerary bust. And that's the way you did learned people who were highly literate, people who were famous for doing something literary. Most of them were Oxford dons. Shakespeare wasn't an Oxford don, but, well, they always get that little gown thing anyway, and a cushion and a pen. So Shakespeare posthumously looks like an Oxford academic, even though he very definitely isn't, and all the writing on the monument says he isn't. But he gets a kind of posthumous honorary degree, which in a way is quite cute, I think.
No, I can't. I'm looking for the lecture right now, and I can't find it.
Well,
Liana is very, very bad.
You want to watch it during the program. I mean, this is tremendous eagerness.
Oh, I have some messages here. Some messages. Ima Sanches saying, "Boas noites from the UK. Lovely to see you all." Renata Casarini, evening. Denis e Gisela Oliveira, good evening. Denis Albino, good evening. Ana Paula Caetano, good evening. Michele Razani, good evening too. Arthur Rialci, Lawrence Flores Pereira, olá pessoal. Hi Lawrence.
Valeria, ask Lawrence to enter the whatever.
Lawrence, we are waiting for you. We want to do a little bit talk to Michael. I am trying to bring Lawrence. And Janaína is saying the link with Michael interviewing John Kenny.
Oh, so kind. Thanks for sharing. I guess she sent the link on the chat. Thanks a lot.
How nice.
How nice. And Michael, talking about drinking and hangovers.
Yes.
Is there any Shakespearean hangover?
It's interesting. Nikki and I went into this earlier this evening. There are hangovers in Shakespeare. We couldn't find any reference to a hangover cure. There's nobody who's referred to some particular way of getting over it. I mean, Iago gives some very bad advice to Cassio when he's recovering from being drunk. But it's about getting his job back. It's not about getting rid of his headache. Mark Antony claims that he only dismissed Caesar's messenger because he had a hangover. You know, that he'd been feasting kings the night before. But he doesn't mention any particular substance that he tries to consume to get over a hangover. Christopher Sly wakes up, presumably, with a hangover, but he's so busy being told he's a lord and being told that the Bartholomew dressed as a woman is his lady that we never see him trying to take medicine. Falstaff, you'd think, would have a permanent hangover, but we see him. I mean, he calls for hot sack with toast in it when he's fished out of the Thames after he's been dumped in with the laundry. But that's not exactly a hangover. That's more a kind of near drowning, dirty laundry experience. So Shakespeare's no good on hangovers. I mean, the alcohol has consequences, but we're kind of left to deal with it ourselves. And of course, you don't want to be too negative about alcohol in a theatre that is making some of its money from selling beer to the customers, apparently during the shows. But there's a lot of medicinal recipes for what's called a morning draft, which is something you're going to have in the morning. And generally, these recipes say, have this with a pint of wine in the morning. That's what's going to set you up for the day. But presumably, if you keep drinking wine with or without herbal medicinal additives fairly regularly, you'll never get round to having the hangover. You'll be sort of perpetually drunk and then you'll be dead and you'll have managed to postpone the hangover, even if you haven't exactly postponed your death from kidney failure.
So Shakespeare was good to make his characters drink a lot, but he was not good to cure the hangover.
Yeah.
He didn't have the cure.
Yeah. it's yes. No, I mean, I ought to go through. I've got a copy of Shakespeare's son-in-law's collected medical notes, which has been edited and published now, John Hall, which includes his various prescriptions for a number of medical conditions. And I should check through there and see if there's anything in there about alcohol abuse. I suspect not. I suspect you probably felt so awful in the 16th century, whether you'd had a lot to drink the night before or not, that you would probably diagnose it as something else. Alcohol largely was something that was keeping you safe from drinking the water, which might have had even worse consequences medically, since in the towns, at least, not much of it was very clean. Yeah. Did you do anything wild for Shakespeare's birthday that's left you still hungover since Friday?
No. This week has been very, very regular. No big deal. Just a few bottles of wine, but no big deal. No hangovers.
Okay. Yeah.
I am on this computer for a long time.
Yeah.
And this is crazy.
Yeah. No, I suspect there will be various phrases coined for different syndromes to do with being on Zoom for too long. Perhaps there will be recognized such a thing as a Zoom hangover. With, symptoms where you can no longer perceive 3 dimensions because you're so looking at flat things for so long. I should say, Nikki was hoping to join us this evening, but she's been on Zoom to Oslo much of the day at a museum studies seminar in Scandinavia, and she has completely fallen asleep now, as with the exhaustion of projecting her expertise down a laptop to Scandinavia for much of the day. It is an odd thing. It's not like talking to an audience. You don't get much energy back, except in the chat box, for which we're always profoundly grateful. I must say it's lovely to see Felipe in the chat box, who was not only a great student at the Shakespeare Institute, but agreed to carry my amplifiers up and down some stairs when my band played at a party in a RSC rehearsal room around the corner, for which he has my undying gratitude. I have usually had to carry my own amplifiers due to overwhelming lack of enthusiasm of anyone where they're likely to arrive. But Felipe was absolutely heroic after that party, carrying that amplification, and a credit to his nation, it seems to me. A person of real self-sacrificing courage.
Michael,
yes,
we did something very, very exciting. We finished this last week, our last rehearsal with Macbeth. We are playing. We will do Macbeth.
Wonderful.
In the next month.
Fabulous.
So we finish, and one of those actors, Roberto Borenstein, that is here. He made that scene, the porteiro, como fala? The
porter.
Oh yeah.
And
that's a good part for wine.
Yes, and this scene is fabulous because it's a scene that started after a murder, a terrible murder, and come this fantastic character and say about the consequence of
Yeah.
getting drunk. So I would like if you can say something about this particular character and this situation, and why Shakespeare do this, a scene of hangover after a murder, like in Hamlet too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's absolutely part of the way Shakespeare works. The argument is transposed into a different register. It's not that it's abandoned. It's not that what the porter says isn't highly relevant to what's going on around him. And he also provides that kind of interim in the action and the suspense. I mean, it's the knocking at the door. Wake Duncan with thy knocking, you know, the crack of doom, you know, it's that terrible, oh my God, there's somebody coming, which then becomes, oh my God, isn't anybody ever going to open this door? You know, the split between people wanting time to stop so they can hide and people wanting to get in somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity for ad-libbing, quite apart from anything else. You know, the porter, I think actors playing the porter should feel free to throw in abusive remarks about people in the audience or people in power, or, you know, anything to draw in a wide frame of reference from the present as well as from the world that's visibly in the play, because, you know, it reaches out, it speaks to the world we're in as well as the world that Macbeth is in. Yeah, I mean, as I've said, there is one Elizabethan play script where there's a stage direction that just says, enter clown saying anything. You know, which is, you know, the comic characters kind of have permission to just come on stage and be themselves and do a routine. I remember seeing a pretty good Macbeth in Stratford early this century, where the clown went off on one about Tony Blair when he was talking about equivocators, because, you know, if you're talking about equivocators in Britain in the early 21st century, you could hardly not mention Tony Blair, who was, you know, the most kind of glaring example of that. It was going to be in everybody's minds anyway. Same as when I was in Paris, watching a production of Twelfth Night, brilliant production of Twelfth Night, directed by Ostermeyer at the Comédie Française. It was the day that President Trump made a state visit. And during the catch scene, the actor playing Toby Belch just went into this ad lib about how he would love to be a president and how great it would be to be driven along the boulevard in your big car. And this very infantile Toby Belch talking about, you know, his kind of identification with Trump. It was just wonderful, and entirely in keeping and in keeping with the way in which the things Shakespeare's writing about in the scenes with the death or the scenes with the love are, you know, the same issues that touch the scenes that, you know, deal with people who are more interested in their own stomachs or in their own bladders. In the case of the porter. You know, it's one of those scenes that reminds you that you're dealing with real bodies. You know, one of them has just had a knife stuck in him, you know, and who'd have thought the old man had so much blood in him, you know, and this other one just at the gate, you know, well, he needs to urinate. And if you're unlucky, he may do so on stage, but I don't know what happened in your production. I'm sure I will find out.
Yes. Liana, say what do you want?
I'm going to take
excuse me, no, I'm not as heroic as Felipe, so I'm not feeling very well because of the Oxford vaccine.
Oh, poor Tuna.
Yes, Oxford vaccine is a lot of effects, so I feel very tipsy.
Yeah.
So many kisses to all of you, and I'm going to rest, and then I'll watch.
Feel better soon, Tuna.
Bye, darling.
Bye.
Guys. Querida Tuna.
And Nikki. Bye, darling.
Yeah.
Take care.
Michael,
Liana,
have you taken the shot?
I've had my first one.
Did you have
I look forward to the second. Sorry?
Did you have any collateral?
No, I mean, the general sort of rumor here is that if you get the AstraZeneca vaccine, you get the side effects after the first dose. But if you get the Pfizer vaccine, which is what we had, you get more side effects after the second dose. So who knows? I may have side effects still to look forward to.
So my question, since we were talking about Macbeth, our friend Lawrence Flores, which I think you remember him from São Paulo.
Yeah.
The year you were here, Lawrence won the prize for his translation of Hamlet. And now he's translating Macbeth. He translated Othello and Lear. The Lear translation I liked immensely. But anyway, he was talking to me the other day about a potential comic, the witches as comic characters. And I have never seen that done on stage. Have you?
There have been periods when the witches have been funnier and less funny. Different styles of comedy maybe. In the 18th century, some theatre goers complained that the witches were often played by male actors in drag, like the three sisters in Cinderella, three ugly sisters, a drag act as men pretending to be old peasant women, old beggarly gammers, as this theatre goer complained. And some people suggested, well, in fact, there was a production, an expat production in Geneva by English people where they played the witches instead as men, as kind of male sorcerers, in the hopes that this would make the audience take them more seriously. In that rather good production by Rupert Gould with Patrick Stewart and Kate Fleetwood, which was quite different on stage to how it was in the TV adaptation, but the TV adaptation is still good. There was a lot of very powerful and very painful black comedy in the witches scenes, because the witches arrived first pretending to be nurses looking after the bleeding sergeant, as you may remember. And then when they were left alone with him, this was before you realized they were the witches. He swapped the order of the scenes. So the play started with the bleeding sergeant. Duncan left the bleeding sergeant telling these three nurses to look after him. And once they were left on stage with him, they injected him with something horrible. And he sort of died twitching on his hospital trolley with all these wires coming out of him. And the witches then looked at each other, pulled their masks off and said, when shall we three meet again? As though this was just their usual pleasant beginning of a coffee morning, of torturing somebody to death with some horrible stuff in a syringe. So there are a lot of touches like that. But yeah, there is, oh, look, here's Fernanda.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone.
Hello, it's wonderful to see you.
For me too, it's wonderful to see you. And to have a chance to thank you in public for all your support, for the book, for the event.
Well, thank you for putting together the book. I long to see a copy of it in my hands, even though I won't be able to understand very much of it because my Portuguese is not what it might be. But I'm so thrilled to see pictures of the book.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's great that it exists.
I know that I joined at the moment of the witches, but I don't want to feel like one. Yeah, I think I came in.
It was a brilliant entrance.
Fernanda, você consegue fazer daquele jeito?
Ok, Valéria.
Aí, olha.
Sorry.
I would
go on with the witches and their comic performances. I was enjoying a lot. I was listening in the backstage.
Oh, bless you. Well, that's nice. Yeah, I'm not averse to a comic witch myself, as long as one does notice the functions they continue to play in the plot, and there's not a split between tragedy and comedy in Shakespeare. A joke can go horribly wrong, the way it does around Malvolio. There are some people who commit murders in Shakespeare thinking it's terribly funny, like Aaron. Where he mimics the sound of the nurse he's just stabbed and says she sounds like a pig. And without apparently thinking that the joke's in rather bad taste. It's we live in a world in which both responses happen, often at terrible moments. I mean, Hamlet's death can be very funny, even to Hamlet. I mean, I remember the way Sam West plays it. It's, as though, oh God, Horatio, as though, Christ, could anything more go wrong? What a terrible Wednesday kind of tone of voice, Yeah, it's those.
I have to read some message here, just a little bit. May Rocha, how lovely is the British accent? A pleasure to hear, besides the content itself. Renata Casarini, drink some red wine here and watch you guys.
Good. Paolo's here. Paolo Gregorio.
Yes, Paolo is here.
Oh, wonderful, Paolo. It's lovely to. I'm sorry I can't see Paolo. I would love to see Paolo, but I'm glad to know that we are in the same virtual space together. He did his PhD at the Institute about the influence of Beckett on the performance of Shakespeare. It was great. Lovely stuff.
Yes. And Roberto Borenstein say, here in Brazil, the porter could eventually mention the lack of vaccines. Roberto was the porter, our porter. Fantastic porter. And Tuna, Marilia say, Tuna, I hope you get better.
Yeah. Yes. We all do.
Yes. Alison Oliveira, Valeria's cat. Yes, my cat was here.
It's a great cat. Thrice the brinded cat hath mewed. Yeah. And I see Sonia Pimentel doesn't like English. So I offer my profound apologies to Sonia. I mean, I love Portuguese, but I'm really sorry about that for Sonia, but perhaps she's already gone off to do something else to escape from this deplorable Northern European language.
But this is an experience that we are doing here. We are
absolutely.
About
we are communicating across language barriers and indeed across species barriers. Actually, that's of course is a 17th century expression. A drink that would make a cat speak. It's alluded to in The Tempest. If you have a really strong alcoholic drink, you say, God, this would make a cat speak. They joke when they're pouring alcohol into Caliban, speak, cat. This will make you speak.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Valeria's cat is already speaking.
Yes. Well, I mean, give your cat a drink and see whether it comes up with Portuguese or English or which language would be nearest to that of a cat.
Well, Felipe says something. Our iconic Estênio Garcia is a famous actor here, doubled as the witches and the Porter in a night.
That's good.
With Vera Fischer and Antonio Fagundes. And hello, Paulo. Hey, something.
Yeah.
Paulo, say something.
Doubling's a great thing. My friend Amanda Harris, who's an associate artist of the RSC now, when she played Lady Macbeth opposite Corinne Redgrave, I think they'd spent all the budget on Corinne Redgrave because she had to double one of the witches as well as Lady Macbeth. There didn't seem to be any kind of significance to it. I just think it was cheap and they weren't in the same scenes. I mean, she was awfully good as a witch and she was a terrific Lady Macbeth, but just gave her a bit more to do. To keep her busy through the evening. After all, Lady Macbeth doesn't have very many scenes. They're very good scenes, but there's not that much dialogue she's got. So being one of the witches, maybe just to keep your hand in a bit, maybe that was a good idea.
Fernanda, did you say something? I interrupted.
No, I would like to know what the dynamics is. Are we going to ask questions to Michael? Can we ask anything we want to him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so late at night, and I've already had so much wine that the risk is that I might answer the question truthfully, if I'm capable of answering it at all. But go ahead, see what happens if that's what you want to do. As long as I get to ask you some questions in return.
No, it's not fair. Okay. No, I've been discussing a lot with my students. It's a subject which is not new at all, but we are still dealing with women in Shakespeare, women characters. And we have some students and we have fallen in love with Helena from All's Well.
Yeah.
And we are thinking that she's been done a big injustice because the play is not very studied. It's never been filmed.
I love that play. I absolutely love All's Well.
Please.
I mean,
I want to hear about Helena All's Well.
Well, one of the, I mean, this is entirely anecdotal and of no help to anybody, especially anybody who wasn't around in 1981. But I was lucky enough to see Trevor Nunn's production of All's Well That Ends Well, which opened in Stratford in the autumn of 1981.
What's going on? Can you hear Michael? Or
yes,
just me?
Yes. It's maybe because the phone. Yes.
Oh, poor Fernanda. Poor deprived woman.
Is it okay? Is it okay now, Fernanda?
Can you hear?
Can you hear?
Can you hear me when I speak?
Maybe the solution is go out and come on again. Maybe you can.
Should I leave and return?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll do this. I'll leave and return. Okay.
I promise I will say nothing about. I will.
She's not. Yeah, she wasn't.
She's gone. I will say nothing about All's Well while she's away.
She will return.
Yeah. We look forward to it. Yeah.
Paulo say, good to see you, Professor. So good to see you all, guys.
Oh, bless him. Well,
and Paulo is my student, theater student now. He's doing
lucky him. Here's Fernanda.
I can hear you now.
Wow, good. Now look, what I was going to say, which was going to bore you rigid, is that in 1981, when I was very impressionable and a student, I managed to get up to Stratford and see Trevor Nunn's production of All's Well That Ends Well. Wonderful. One of the best shows I'm ever likely to see. Terrific cast. Harriet Walter played Helena. Peggy Ashcroft was the Countess. An actor called Stephen Moore played Parolles. I liked it so much that I actually was at a party with Stephen Moore at the turn of the millennium. you know, we saw in the 21st century together, me and Parolles, among many others, including my family. It was a very beautiful production. It was Chekhovian. It was given an Edwardian looking setting, sort of Ruritanian, you know, a feudal world that was about to vanish. Parolles took golf clubs with him to the war. There were lovely touches like that. I mean, Helena is a wonderfully uncharacteristic Shakespearean heroine. The play is sort of Hamlet turned inside out. It's Hamlet in which Gertrude and Ophelia conspire to trap Hamlet into marriage, even though, you know, Bertram is one of those men in Shakespeare who is raped. You know, he is tricked into having sex with somebody he definitely doesn't want to have sex with, and indeed whom he thinks is already dead. It's a very nasty story. And the fascinating thing about Helena is that she tells lies and she doesn't confide in the audience. She's totally unlike Rosalind. We just sit there and are just thinking, my God, is that really what her plan is? Why is she doing this? He's going to fall for it. You know, we're set at a very different angle to the story. It's not that there's somebody in the middle of it, like Hamlet, like Rosalind, saying, look, this is what's happening. This is me. What am I going to do? Helena just, you know, completely keeps this master plan to herself, and we watch it being done. It's very Austenian. I mean, it's a play Jane Austen loved. That's why the family are called Bertram in Mansfield Park. You know, she read this one well. You know, everything's ironic. People achieve exactly the opposite of what they think they're achieving, and the way in which the Parolles plot and the Bertram plot just play with each other is just exquisite. I mean, one of my very favorite lines in the whole of Shakespeare is the way Parolles just picks himself up after he's totally exposed and humiliated, and he's not going to have to pretend anymore. And he just says, you know, simply the thing I am shall make me live. You know, I can make a living as a humiliated clown. I don't have to pretend to be a war hero anymore. It's a moment of extraordinary release. It was beautiful production. I think it's an astonishing piece of drama, and every time you see it, the whole point is that you don't really know what to do with it. It is not a happy story. It's not a happy ending. It's an incredibly satisfying ending in terms of narrative, and it's a play that's got a fake happy ending halfway through, which appears to be totally destroyed, and then comes round and produces a quite different ending entirely on Helena's own terms, by which the Countess is pushed out. Now, I'll tell you another story about All's Well in Performance. The Countess, as you'll have noticed, has nothing to do in the second half of the play until the very end, when she has really very little to do. When Judi Dench was playing the Countess, the production, it was Greg Doran's production, it transferred to London, and it was playing on Shaftesbury Avenue. It was sold as Judi Dench in All's Well That Ends Well. People who didn't know the play, you know, spent most of the second half kind of looking around saying, where the hell's Judi? You know, what happened to Judi? What had happened to Judi was that Judi is a very hard-working actress, and she used to get bored. You know, she'd think, you know, I'm not going to sit in my dressing room for an hour. Why would I do that? And she would sneak out into the theatre next door, which was the theatre that at the time was accommodating Les Miserables. And Judi would make uncredited appearances as a French peasant, singing in the chorus of Les Mis for an hour and then go back into the theatre next door and get changed and come on for the last scene of All's Well That Ends Well. Because otherwise she'd get kind of stiff. She would just rather be useful, even if it was being in the chorus of the musical next door for half an hour or so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a nice show.
Love the story.
Which theaters were those? Which theaters? The theaters. The name of the theaters.
Oh, well, I have to look it up. I think it may have been the Gielgud that it transferred to, but it was. They were on Shaftesbury Avenue. This was about 2005, maybe 2004 even. Greg's production, Greg Doran's production. It was a slightly sentimental production, and it's interesting how the play won't really support that. The play wanted, Greg tried to make a big touching moment for the reunion between Helena and the Countess. Helena's line is, "Oh, my dear mother, do I see you living?" Which is very double-edged. You could read that as, "Oh, I'm the Countess now, because I'm married to your son, the Count. How long are you still going to be alive?" You are now the Dowager Countess. Your status has been totally changed by what I've done. It's sweet. You can make it sweet, but that's the only line they have together. Shakespeare doesn't give you big speeches to reaffirm that this is supposed to be a big moment in the last scene. It's really what happens between Helena and Bertram that's so compelling. The production, the 1981 production, I saw it because I liked it so much. I went to see it in Stratford, and I went to see it again when it transferred to London. They had changed Bertrams. In Stratford, the Bertram was Mike Gwilym. In London, the Bertram was Philip Franks. And it was, I must say, it was perhaps the most satisfying afternoon of my professional life was when at the Institute a couple of years ago, Harriet Walter, who is now an honorary fellow and we see in Stratford quite a bit, she came and gave a talk, and somebody asked her, "Look, was that production very different when you had Mike Gwilym as Bertram and then when you had Philip Franks as Bertram?" And Harriet said, "I'm not sure I remember very clearly. Michael, you saw it with both casts. What was it like?" To be able to, to tell from memory, Harriet Walter, the different ways in which those particular scenes worked with those particular actors. It was really sweet to be a kind of just fleetingly to fill in as a missing part of Harriet Walter's memory. That's well beyond any of my ambitions when I saw that show. Just for the record, Mike Gwilym was physically repulsed by Helena. He really had a thing about how much he didn't like this waiting gentlewoman. There was a real kind of inverted erotic charge to his rejection of Helena, which made you think that something really interesting might happen between them, even in the circumstances that had arisen now. Philip Franks was just so posh that he'd really never noticed her. There was just nothing. Helena, this is some mistake. There wasn't a charge there at all. He was clearly going to be quite a boring husband one way or the other. It would have been more exciting story, I think, with Mike Gwilym. But it was Harriet Walter. It was always going to be exciting. She is just the most, she's the most fascinatingly awkward, intelligent actress. And the subtext and the sparks between her and Peggy Ashcroft, the sense of Peggy Ashcroft trying to find out who she is, her trying to conceal it, and being clearly trying to control this problem she's having, and and being embarrassed about having to control it and being resentful about having to hide it, you know, was just fascinating. Anyway, as you say, it's a great play, and it works, you know, and people should perform it more often. Oh, I can't hear you now.
You are muted. Yeah, I guess.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Am I on now? No, I think
there you are.
talked too little about this play, and I think we talked too little about Helena as a character, because she I think perhaps it's the most interesting relationship between a woman and money in Shakespeare. Because we have Portia, who's very rich, but she's under her father's command. I mean, she can't choose her husband. She has to submit to the test her father has set to her. But Helena is free with the money she gets from after curing the king, after healing the king. So she has a job, and she has means to achieve what she wants. I think it's
George Bernard Shaw was very keen on Helena. He's got lines about her in his little Shakespeare skit, Dark Lady of the Sonnets, where Shakespeare complains that All's Well That Ends Well isn't as popular as his other comedies, and says it's because he's put an intelligent new woman in it who's independent and has professional skills. Leonardo Alfonso points out that no, not at all. And Leonardo Alfonso saw the 2013 RSC production with Greg Hicks.
Yes.
Greg, who is obsessed with Brazil. I recorded an interview with Greg Hicks when he was playing. What was he playing? It was while he was playing Macbeth, although I was actually talking with him about playing the ghost in Hamlet. And he insisted on meeting me in a Brazilian cafe in the West End of London. And he'd just come from his capoeira class. And the Brazilian music was so loud in the cafe that the tape of the interview, you know, there's much more sort of on it than there is of, what Greg was saying. I had to piece it together largely from memory. But, he was great as the king. He was quite surprised to be put in that part. He was playing Claudius in the same season, as I recall, which is quite fun to see him as these two kings with these two problem girls around.
Michael, can you tell us something about how the RSC is going to resume the productions?
Yeah, they are starting off by building a temporary outdoor theatre. That's happening now. They had two productions that were due to open a year ago, more than a year ago now, The Winter's Tale and Comedy of Errors. The Winter's Tale, which both went into a kind of cryogenic freeze. You know, they've been in a kind of state of suspended animation. You know, they were fully rehearsed, but they hadn't been in front of a live audience. The Winter's Tale, the RSC filmed for TV before it had ever been in front of an audience. And that was broadcast here on Sunday night as part of Shakespeare's birthday weekend. So there's now a video recording of that Winter's Tale, even though it's only been seen on television and hasn't been seen in the theatre. It was filmed on the stage, but in the empty theatre. Comedy of Errors is going to open in June in a new temporary open-air theatre, more or less in the round, in the garden immediately behind the Swan Theatre. Those of you know Stratford. So it'll be, the audience won't be so crowded, and it'll be in the open air. It's directed by Philip Breen. I think it'll be very good. Philip's a very good director. He's a very good director of comedy. It may be kind of family fun oriented, but I'm sure it'll be effective. So that's the first stage, and everybody, as everywhere, is checking how the regulations are changing, how the casualty figures are changing, how the vaccination statistics are going. and we don't yet know what will be the first show back in any of the indoor theatres. But different theatres now are announcing plans to do things distanced. The Bridge Theatre, Nick Heitner's pet project near Tower Bridge, they were doing some socially distanced performances in the autumn, with lots of the seats taken out. Simon Russell Beale, who works with Nick Heitner a lot, he's going to open fairly soon in a new play about Bach. Simon is very, very musical. The play sounds like Amadeus, except about Bach. So, Simon Russell Beale and your favorite Bach tunes, I mean, it doesn't sound like an evening entirely wasted. And in January, they're opening a small scale production with a cast of, I think, 7 of the Scottish play. I say that just to humor Daniel. In fact, forget I said that, because I don't think it's been announced yet. But so I'm not going to mention who the lead actor is, but he's terribly good. And I'm really looking forward to it, to this production, which may or may not happen, and on which I haven't committed myself or in any way disclosed anything. But there we are. So, as I say, theatres are gradually poised to reopen, not very profitably. I mean, we look at Europe, where the vaccinations have been much slower, where the casualty statistics are still very bad, but where there have been theatres which, because they're better looked after in terms of subsidy, have been able to reopen even with audiences of a quarter of what they would normally hold. I look at my Instagram feed and I see and I hear from my friends at the Moscow Arts Theatre and at the Berliner Ensemble and at the Schaubühne, and they've been functioning throughout. The lovely production, The Cherry Orchard, on at the Moscow Arts Theatre at the moment. If only we could go to Moscow, But there are all kinds of borders between here and Moscow. And, we'd be in danger of having a total of about 6 months quarantine, just trying to get there, waiting either side of the border in motel rooms before one finally got into the arts theatre. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, we are trying. My daughter, one of my daughters, this is free advertising. One of my daughters is appearing in an opera in Holland Park in the summer. They can do it because it's outdoors. And what they're going to do is the audience will have headphones playing a recording of the orchestra and with the singers mixed in. And the singers will be mic'd up and moving around among them. And you follow the story through the park. So it's this kind of semi-impromptu outdoor way of doing opera, so that you're not in an unhygienic sealed-in building. And the show you want to see at Holland Park is Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel, starring various singers, one of whom has the same second name as me.
What's your second name?
I only have the two.
Well, you say you have answered the question from Renata, né? Can I put a question about the theater already? But there is a plan about the theater. Here, there is no plan.
Well, I mean, the plan. There are several plans being sort of improvised around the changing regulations by different theatres, but the government has announced a planned series of dates for the relaxation of certain rules, which is how come I'm involved in planning a street party in late June, which, you know, we hope will still be able to happen. And you're all invited, by the way, if you should happen. Yeah. Oh, and some fan mail from Janaina about Greg Hicks. He was the best ghost ever. I think in some ways, Greg is better as ghosts than he is at people who are still alive. I did an interview with him about it, which you can buy in a splendid book called Performing Shakespeare's Tragedies Today, edited by me. Yeah, no, Greg's terrific in that book. I like Greg. Greg, by the way, this is something that may be useful to Daniel. Greg is a wonderful blues harmonica player, as well as being very much engaged with Brazilian music. He's a fabulous harmonica player.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Leonardo say something to us, to Janaína, and Renata say, I get every promotions for musicals, pure escapism, as they themselves say. We need art to survive this.
Yeah. And for the benefit of Leonardo, the ghost where Greg was a really good ghost was when he dragged a great sword behind him. You know, he barely had any costume, just a kind of shroud, and this single enormous sword that it seemed to be his eternal punishment to drag around with him, which made this resonant scraping noise on the ground. And he seemed to be in a slightly different time zone to Hamlet. You know, his movements were very stylized and under terrible strain. You could feel the pain in his body. He was doing various appalling things to his internal organs while he was performing, I think. You felt this pain, and you felt that he was in another dimension to the other characters in the story. It was a phenomenal piece of acting. Yeah.
Since we have so many scholars here, what are you expecting from the World Shakespeare Congress in Singapore?
Well, I was expecting a holiday in Bali straight afterwards. I'm no longer expecting that because the conference has had to move online. But there's the great thing is that there will be a wonderful online theatre festival of Asian productions of Shakespeare, which delegates will be able to watch and discuss, and there will be watch parties with question and answers with the directors and with the casts. Fabulous. I mean, some of the most exciting Shakespearean performances happening in Asia these days. There will be some very good panels. Great stuff about what Shakespeare looks like from that side of the world, as well as the usual. I mean, one takes for granted a high-level conference is going to have the latest scholarship on the various topics it touches on. But I'm particularly looking forward to the shows. I mean, I'm of course corrupt on this as on other things because I'm one of the committee organizing the thing. That's what was going to qualify me for the holiday in Bali, which I was going to pay for, I should say. It was in no way coming out of anybody's registration fee. You know, everybody on the local organizing committee, we'd all arranged, you know, we got the whole thing lined up, beautiful hotel. Never mind. We won't be in Singapore, but Singapore will be very much permeating the conference in that it'll be World Shakespeare seen from these cultures where Shakespeare arrived at the same time as Ibsen, where Shakespeare was part of Western modernity, but has been co-opted and assimilated and used, and has been about a dialogue with the rest of the world, and has also been about rediscovering Asian theatre forms, some of them involving ghosts and involving fairies and spirit worlds, some fascinating stuff. One of the productions will be, well, I ought to have the script lying around here. Yes, here we are. This is the RSC sponsored Mandarin translation of Henry V, which was performed in Shanghai in 2016 and filmed. And the film of that production, with surtitles, will be part of the festival. Brilliant production. Really, it was great seeing a young Chinese cast performing Henry V to a young Chinese audience who had no idea what was going to happen next, or who was supposed to win, but just were gripped by the story. The night I was there, some other scholars were in too, including the wonderful Michiko Sumeko from Japan, who was sitting with a friend of mine and was saying during the early scenes, why is, because it was modern dress, and she was saying, why isn't Henry wearing a crown? Why is he wearing such boring clothes? Why is he wearing the same sort of clothes as the other people he's supposed to be commanding? And eventually my friend had to turn to her and say, shh, shh, this is a communist country. Which made sense. He was a kind of designated leader, but he wasn't an emperor. Not in the way this production saw him. It was a lovely piece of work. Anyway, yeah, so there'll be that one it was directed by an English director, Owen Horsley, but with Shanghai cast, and there will be productions from elsewhere in Asia and lots of fun stuff. There's a brilliant panel in which Nikki Watson is going to talk about the Peony Pavilion, which was given by the city of Fuzhou to Stratford-Upon-Avon. This traditional Chinese garden building, really, which is now in a park in Stratford. It's part of a whole panel about the relations between Stratford in particular and Asia, which will have all kinds of fun stuff in it, but including beautiful pictures of the Peony Pavilion, which was installed in 2019. In Fuzhou, they're building replicas of much of Stratford. There will be an entire dummy Stratford with all the buildings in the wrong order in Fuzhou, along with buildings from Cervantes, Spain, and Tianjianzu's Fuzhou, because these are three great writers who were all alive at the same time, even though Shakespeare had heard of Cervantes. Cervantes hadn't heard of Shakespeare. Neither Shakespeare nor Cervantes had a clue about Tianjianzu, and he didn't have a clue about them. But nonetheless, Tianjianzu wrote the Peony Pavilion. So, this means Stratford gets a free Peony Pavilion as a prize for having been the home of somebody who was alive at the same time as Tianjianzu. It's a lovely pavilion. I really like it. It's just beyond the back garden of the Shakespeare Institute. I was there today. It's a charming pavilion. If you ever want to drink jasmine tea in Stratford, it's the place to come. Recommended. So that'll be featured at some point during the World Congress, during the panel on Stratford and Asia. There'll be all the fun of the fair, except sadly it'll only be online, and any Singaporean food you'll just have to order as takeaway and eat in front of your laptop. It's such a shame. Nikki and I went to the restaurants as part of the planning for this conference. I know exactly where we ought to be eating in Singapore during this conference, just as I know exactly where we ought to be in Bali straight after it. This fabulous seafood place out near the eastern tip of the island, where you watch all the planes come in while you're eating your prawns. That's where we won't be for the World Shakespeare Congress. However, with luck, with luck, the next great international conference, which will be in Stratford in 2022, we're hoping that at least some people will be able to actually physically get to it.
Yes. We want. Yeah. Michael,
yes.
We are going to finish our live, and I would like to say that our two friends, Liana and Fernanda, has a very fantastic book.
Oh, it's a great book. Let's show us the book.
Antes que o mundo acabe, and shows the book. Yes. And
whoa, look at that.
Michael has an article in this book, very, very nice. And everybody wants to buy this book. Na legenda do vídeo tem o link para compra do livro. Tudo que você precisa saber sobre Shakespeare antes que o mundo acabe. Está um sucesso, não é isso? It's a success. A success.
Yes, people are really enjoying the book. And
good.
I love your text for the book, Michael. I think it's a brilliant text. And I was very glad that one of my supervisees, Eloisa, she translated it to Portuguese. And they were both very happy with the result. So I think I think it was a very good encounter of your text with the Portuguese language.
I'm sure it's an improvement. I think the next thing you should do is set it to music.
Okay, we'll play an opera with it.
Yeah.
I was very happy. We were very happy to have you in the book.
Well, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be in it, and I look forward to having it on the shelves of the library and the institute.
I think it's traveling to England. According to the publisher, it's been sent to you. It's going to be there soon.
There will be a huge party when it arrives.
Okay.
Even if I'm the only person there.
All right.
So the last words on this live, nessa live. Oh, sorry, maybe the wine is a little bit high.
The wine is up.
Yes. Michael, your last words today. Fernanda, Liana,
well, it's a treat to see the four of you and to be nominally in Brazil. I wish we were doing this physically in Brazil, but I'm absolutely delighted by everything I increasingly learn about the Portuguese language and the Portuguese Renaissance and the extraordinary cultural richness of Brazil. I mean, one of my best friends, of my closest and oldest friends, one of them has two daughters who both studied Portuguese at university in order to spend time in Brazil, and he plays samba the whole time. And another of them came to Brazil to write a whole book about bossa nova. There is great enthusiasm for Brazilian culture among my immediate circle, and I share it. I find, I have to confess, I have only ever seen one Brazilian production of Shakespeare live rather than on video, but Tuna was in it and it was stunning. It was that lovely, very funny, very wry Troilus in Sao Paulo. Liana was there. It was great. Yeah. No, I'm very, very pleased to be here. And I'm sorry if I just droned on about Harriet Walter for about half an hour, but people get used to that. It just happens.
Liana, Fernanda.
Valeria, do you know that Michael is an actor, and he knows how to imitate Gilded?
Yeah. Can you spell?
Please, Michael, go ahead.
At this time of night, I think it would be disrespectful. Gielgud. I met Gielgud once, and he opened a theatre for my grandfather. So I have huge respect for Gielgud. But when I was a student, I just used to listen to records of Gielgud, gramophone records. I had a whole gramophone record of Richard II. And that sound, those notes that go, those whole octaves on a single vowel, have stayed with me. You know, I miss the sound of Gielgud very much.
Splendid, it's wonderful. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Michael, and also Fernanda, Liana, and Valeria. It was so nice to have you here, and I know it's a big effort for you to be here so late. Yeah, sure, it's Friday today, but I thank you a lot for being here, not just this time, but the other ones too. And thanks.
Anytime.
And I have to say that before our show started, Michael was playing guitar, and perhaps in the next
well, the next
wine we will have a hockey star here too.
That would be good. I mean, ideally, the next time Daniel and I will be in the same studio. And, you know, and we'll bore you rigid with our greatest hits for hours on end.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have it.
Sure. It's great to see a picture of Janaína too. You know, thanks to everybody who is still watching. You know, you've been heroic.
Thank you very much, everybody. Obrigada a todos que estiveram conosco no Revelando Shakespeare especial. E nos encontramos na semana que vem, quinta-feira, com convidados especiais que vocês vão amar. Um abraço. Obrigada, Liana, Fernanda, Daniel, Michael. Bye, bye. See you soon.